In this segment of the video series on taking the National Kitchen and Bath Association certification exams, I'm going to focus on the floor plan and take a look at how you can go about bubble diagramming in the software to create your solution and maybe coming up with a couple of options and then actually going through the floor plan process. Coming up with a solution is obviously one of the more challenging things in going through the project. You can bubble diagram in program, and there's a few different ways you might think about doing it. Sometimes I will just simply place a couple of cabinets, a 24-inch cabinet, maybe a cabinet that would be a sink base if you know an exact dimension, if we make this 36 inches. And you can also open up the library and place maybe a couple of objects. If I come down here and take a look at the fixtures and maybe grab maybe a bathtub that is of a particular size, and let's just grab one here that you can use for your space planning. You can click on these objects and you can easily resize them. Let me turn on my temporary dimension. So you can click on them and be specific about the size. If it's a 72-inch tub, again, I'm not too interested in what it looks like, but you can use this then to move around in the design. And then the other thing I like to do sometimes is you can simply place a CAD box in here, and let me go in and show you where you can turn on for the label. Let's specify a label, and I'm going to insert the square footage. So in this case, I'm going to put the square footage of the area, and then also on here, the line style, you can show the length. And if you zoom in now, you could size this to something if you had a very specific room dimension. Let's say if you had to have a closet that was exactly, 40 square feet, then you could use this and kind of place these, maybe make a couple of copies of it so that you don't have to do that again and come up with the different sizing of these. This way you're not maybe drawing walls, which then cause a little bit of more thought process before you get it laid out. You can then move these around and figure out if you have a roughly enough space. Again, a lot of times I'll use the control key so that I have control over where things are going to go. Maybe you have a cook range or something that's a certain size and you need to move it around. This way it kind of helps you figure out a solution before you get too wrapped up in drawing walls and needing to redo it. I guess this is why you're a professional designer, because this is a problem-solving thing that you have to go through. And the quicker you get through this, then the more time you have to actually draft it up. So here's a couple of tips on maybe using it for space planning. Place some of the symbols out of the library, maybe some CAD objects like I've done here. I'm going to go ahead and delete those, and then we're going to move on and take a look at creating the floor plan set. In the earlier video segment, we went through and created the construction plan, the dimensions, and all the known facts about the design. As we get ready to move forward in creating our floor plan, I'm going to change our annotation set to the floor plan. That's going to remove the dimensions and the text and the various things off of the plan. And remember, if we take a look at the cheat sheet, we want to make sure that we're using the floor plan annotations and the floor plan set for the layers. That way it makes it easy for us to get things moving. Let's zoom out, and in the template plan there was a text block for our notes, and I'm just going to create a copy of that, and I'm going to slide it over here into place. And as we go forward on our kitchen, then we'll have that note pad that we can use. It's already pre-populated with some text that I had. As I begin, here's a completed view of what the floor plan is going to look like as we place the cabinets. You can see that in the 3D overview of this design, there's some accessibility components that we're going to work into it. Let's go ahead and get started on the process. Now I'm going to begin with a base cabinet, and I'm going to simply click it here in the middle of the plan. When you are reading through the specifications on scenario for your exam, you may have specific requirements about your cabinets. You can come in here and make changes. The requirement may be that it's a framed or a frameless cabinet, may have specific information about the overlay, maybe it's an inset box. You can make changes to this about the cabinets. Maybe the countertop is a thicker countertop. We could come in and make changes to this. After you've made changes to the cabinet and you select and close that dialog, you can come down here in the lower section of the menu, and there is a set as default. All future cabinets for the base cabinets that you place will then have those attributes for that cabinet. You can do the same thing for the wall cabinets, and you can do the same thing for your full height cabinets. You can do it after the fact, but this is a tip if you want to maybe take advantage of known facts about the design before you begin placing all of your cabinets. So let's make the assumption as we move forward that I've gone through, I've set those defaults based on the criteria in the exam, and we'll go ahead and start placing some of our cabinets. I'm going to begin against this left wall, and I'm going to start with the base cabinets. Click in the corner, it becomes a corner cabinet. Next, I'm going to place a 21-inch cabinet. I'm just going to simply come in here and resize that to 21 inches. I'm going to place another cabinet for sink base, and this cabinet I'm going to resize it to 39 inches. One more cabinet for dishwasher. Dishwashers insert into cabinets and become dishwasher. You get the automatic countertop from the benefit of that. And then finally, let's come in here and place a wall cabinet, a full height cabinet for a double oven. And I want that to be 30 inches. So I'm just going to resize that to be 30 inches. And then in this space in here, let's use a full height filler. And then we'll just place that, and then we'll resize that out to that size. Now, I've got the wall somewhat filled out, at least on the bottom. You can do your design work, and at some point you'll need to get a wall elevation for this main wall. You can do your design work in any of these views that you're comfortable with. You can see what happened to that filler, so let's just pull that down, and we'll just start making changes maybe from the left to right. Let's start with the corner cabinet here. It's supposed to be a pie-shaped cabinet, so I'm going to remove the diagonal door. And I'm also going to mark that it has a Lazy Susan. You'll be able to see that outline in the plan view when we go back there. This cabinet here is going to be a pull-out. The way pull-outs work in Chief Architect, you can either make it as a solid drawer or a door style. It depends on what your cabinet face item looks like. Since I don't have my opening indicators, I want my pull-out to take on the door style since it's a frame door style. In that case, let's go ahead and click on the front of the cabinet, and I'm going to simply delete the drawer out. Click delete, and then for the hardware, for that knob, I want to have that centered. It's a 21-inch cabinet, so on the door and drawer style underneath the door handle, I'm going to come in and move that from the edge at half the distance, which would be 10.5. That will update. Finally, in the label column, notice that the label is a full height cabinet. I want to change that to be a pull-out cabinet, so I'm just going to come in here and call it a PO21. And if you want to insert a macro, again, you're in time crunch, but there's a width. If you ever resize it, then you don't have to worry about updating that. It's always dangerous if you change the size of a cabinet and you haven't updated it. For the sink base, this is going to be an accessible cabinet. Let's take a look at the changes here. The sink base needs some accessibility standards set to it. In making those changes, I'm going to come in and set the height of that cabinet to be 24 inches. Press the tab key. You can see the change on it. I'm also going to click on the front of this cabinet, and on the door I'm going to simply remove it and click on the opening, remove that, and now I just have one large face item. And to take that space up, I'm actually going to come in on the toe kick, which is back on the general panel, and on the toe kick I'm just going to come in here and make a change to that. Press the tab key. You can see the preview update to it. Now the other thing is the floor to bottom. I'm going to raise that up so that it's in line with the other cabinets. This may be a little bit higher than a typical at 36 inches on the floor to top. Maybe the requirement, this is maybe a larger person that needs accessibility, but typically you may want to see that at maybe 32 inches or 34 inches, whatever it may be. So I've made changes to this accessibility. The other thing is on the depth for the toe kick. I'm going to set that to be 8 inches, and that will then recess that back. You can see what it does, and we'll go ahead and close that dialog, and you can see the changes that take effect. Let's go in and find a dishwasher and a double oven out of the library. We'll browse into appliances, and I'm going to look for a dishwasher in here that will fit. Let's go ahead and find one that usually has a pretty thin handle on it, and I'm just going to click and it will replace the cabinet box. Now I don't usually do the same thing on the double oven because when you click it's just going to put it in the middle of it. So what I'm going to do in this case is let's close the library, open up this cabinet. Once I open up the full height cabinet, I'm going to click on the face item front. That'll change the panel to the front and sides. Just below the auto right door on the separation, I'm going to add new, and here is where I'm going to choose that it's an appliance, and I'm going to give it the item height. Now typically when you're speccing this out in a design world, you're going to be very specific and get your rough dimensions for the manufacturer. In this case, you may have those in your use case scenario. On this case, I'm going to set it at 42 inches. It's important to have this set to be locked. It won't resize on you. And then let's also select the bottom face item. May turn out to be a warming drawer or may turn out to just be a regular drawer depending on what your scenario is. In this case, let's go ahead and set it to be a drawer. And let's go ahead and set that face item height to be 10 inches. So let's go ahead and set that. Again, it's locked. Press the tab key. You'll see the preview update. And to make a overlay for that oven that's going to slide in there, I may come into the separation, add new, create a blank area so it looks good in my elevation view, and I'm going to set that blank area to 1 inch. And then I'm also going to come in just below it, insert a new blank area again at 1 inch, and now I've got it set up. On the appliance, all I have to do now is browse into the library, find the component that I'm after, and that's under Architectural Appliances, and we should be able to find an oven in here. And what I'm actually looking for is something that can be used as a combo oven. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. A combo oven or something that looks like a combo oven. Once I find it, that appliance is going to then fill that space in the design. That's the advantage to doing it this way versus finding it and clicking on it like we did the dishwasher. Once we close that, you can see the update. I'm just going to use my eyedropper and pick up the stainless so it looks the same in the elevation view. The next thing is to place our wall cabinets. Place your wall cabinets. Again, this is going to have the defaults you've selected. If you want to change those, you can open it up and make the changes, and then all future cabinets will have those same properties. In this case, I'm going to place a wall cabinet to the right side of the window. I want to make sure the spacing is exactly between the window casing, and with the cabinet selected, I'm going to use the copy tool and then reflect about, which you'll see in the lower left hand menu. Come in around the sink base, and that will exactly position that at the same distance. And in this case, I'm going to make this cabinet a little bit larger. See if I can go to, let's say, 27 inches. And it may be difficult to place a wall cabinet in the corner. It may just try to place a wall cabinet that's not a corner. I'm going to go back into the floor plan, and I'm going to place a wall cabinet in the corner. Again, when you come into the corner, it will automatically place the corner cabinet. Let's open it up, make a change so that it is a pie-shaped cabinet. Then we'll kind of go around here and do some cleanup. Let's zoom in. Notice that the base cabinet below, the label you cannot see. It's being truncated because it is below the wall cabinet. When I click on it and I zoom in, there's a little label indicator, and it's difficult to see unless you zoom right in. It's this little square right in between the B and the 3. If you select that, again, I hold the control key down, pull it out so that it is then visible from that wall cabinet. And as we slide around, we already made the label change on the pull out. We haven't made a change on the sink base yet, so I'm going to leave that. This cabinet here has the professional dishwasher with a very long label. Let's make a change to that label. I'm going to open it up on the label panel. Let's go ahead and specify a label, and I'm just going to abbreviate that with DW. And then if there's any other changes that I may want to make on this filler here, let's make a change. That's a pretty long filler name. If you want the full nomenclature on there, you can leave it on there. I'm just going to call it a wall filler 3. Again, make sure that your nomenclature is complying with the standards. I'm not sure if I've done the right thing with calling that just a WF3. But that's how you change the labels on it. Now the wall elevation camera, I'm going to use that in my floor plan to make sure the call out is appropriate. And the default came in with elevation 3. I'm just going to call this main wall elevation. And for the plan display, I'm going to call it A, make it simple. And then you can position it wherever you want along that wall. It won't make any changes, so if you end up moving it to be more convenient where you have an electrical or you have something else in your floor plan, you can move it as long as you don't move it past. If I move it in here, it's going to cut into that cabinet. So I usually leave it out somewhere the edge of the box in here. You go back into the wall elevation and you can see there's our corner cabinet. The next thing that I want to do is it calls for a light rail and a crown molding on these cabinets. So I'm going to shift select. Let's go ahead and shift select these cabinets, and then the filler. Once I've shift selected it, you can see that there are 5 objects selected if you look in the lower left hand section of my menu, and then I can then press the open button or double click on it, and underneath the molding panel we can go in and add the molding profile. Select add, browse out, find the profile. It may be specific to your scenario. In this case I'm going to use a basic rectangular shape. I'm also going to just set it to be 2 inches in height. It's 5/8 in thickness. And then the vertical offset, you can think of this as sitting on top of the box. If I say -2, it's going to set it exactly on top of the box. Once I close that, you'll be able to see the molding then applies to the boxes. For the cabinets that require a light rail, let's open those up, and again on the molding panel, add new. I'm going to just select the same rectangular molding. In this case I'm going to make it 1 inch height, vertical offset from the bottom of -1 inches. So if you think of the negative number going in opposite directions, it will do that. If you look at the side of the box, I don't want that molding, that light rail, to protrude out. The thickness of it is 5/8, and so I'm just going to simply come in here and set that horizontal offset to a -5/8. That way it will make it square on the side. Next, we need to put a sink into the sink base cabinet. You'll go into the library. Underneath the fixtures category, we'll zoom down and find our sinks, and then there's a kitchen sinks undermount, and you can find one of the undermounts here. I don't think I have a shallow sink that's good for accessibility. When I click on this, it's going to protrude down below. Not necessarily an easy way to fix that, and if you want to avoid having that protrude down, I'm going to kind of go through a different process to do this. I'm actually just going to use an apron sink. Let's go ahead and find an apron sink, maybe without fixtures. Click and place that on the center of that cabinet. In this case I need to pull it down into the cabinet, and let's just go ahead and hold the control key down, and I'm just going to have it set up so that you can't see it. So this accomplishes it in the elevation view. It will also solve it in the 2D view. May not be the right way to do it in your design practice. Let's go into our 2D view, and you can see the sink base here. And I'm also going to resize it so we have room to get the faucet in there. I'm going to find a freestanding faucet. Let's also make sure that it's centered on the sink base cabinet. I'm going to find a freestanding faucet. We'll come up, find the faucets. Let's see if we can find one here that will work. Find this one, we'll click and place it. And I'm also looking for something that can be used as a spray, and that's probably not what I want. Maybe we can find another one that's similar, and I'll just resize it to make it look a little bit smaller. Again, an example of you have to press the tab key on that to get it. So I'm going to highlight the faucet there. I'm going to use the center tool, center it on there, and then we'll pull this, what's supposed to be a spray, down so that it's about spray height and looks more like a spray. Next, let's go ahead and dimension the wall elevation. I'm going to use the automatic dimensions to get me started. And before I select the auto elevation tool, I want to make sure that my active defaults are using the NKBA general annotations. If you click the automatic dimensions and they look really bad, make sure that you're using the NKBA general annotations in this section view set for your layer set in the wall elevation. Let's go ahead and select that tool. That's going to place most of the dimensions in a pretty well formed way. It's picking up a lot of things, and let's go through and clean this up from maybe working at the top right and work our way around. I'm just going to simply pull off some of these dimensions that I don't need. I've got the casing and I've got the center line on the oven. It's also covered down below. I'm actually just going to delete the entire center line for the wall oven down there. We'll pull this dimension down. Maybe I'll also pull this one down a little bit closer in, and we'll just kind of clean that up that way. Now on this side of the dimension, I don't care about a lot of these things, so let's go in here and clean some of these off. Let's go ahead and pull it off the window. I'm just clicking on these diamonds and pulling them off. I want to make sure that it's on top of the top countertop. We'll pull that off. And I also want to make sure that it's on the bottom of this cabinet. So I'll pull this one off. I don't care about the toe kick on this side. I'm going to make sure it's on the other side. I think the only other thing I want to make sure that I have in here is I don't care about the molding, so I'll pull that off. I've got the molding over there. For the time being, I'll probably come back and double check this. Let's go ahead and pull this in a little bit. Again, I purposely left off the toe kick. You may not want to do that. You may want to make sure that you have the toe kick on both sides. Now, I want to make sure that I get this dimensioned right in here on this cabinet. And if you click on the dimension, and you go to pull the diamond over, there's nothing to click on for the face item. In that case, where you find where you can't dimension to something and you want to, it may be missing a face item or something and you want to dimension to it, I'm going to press W on the keyboard and I'm just going to come in here and line this up. And I'm just going to draw a line. Once that line is drawn, I'll click back on the dimension tool, come over here, then pull it up, and you can see that it has it. And once it's highlighted, I'll click on the extension and maybe just pull that through the line. You may need to then pull your dimensions back. Let's go ahead and pull that back a little bit. If I click on the line, you can also set it to be more precise. In that case, I knew that was 9 inches. I now have that breakout that I want for dimensioning to that face item. Let's move to the bottom. So I've got my 3-inch filler over here. Again, when you select the dimension, you can see that it picked up, for some reason, the wall cabinet, picked up the casing. I'm just pulling those diamonds off, pulling that off, and that will then clean up that string of dimensions. It's picked up the extra corner. Let's go ahead and pull that off, press the space bar, and that looks pretty clean where it's got mainly just the boxes. We've got the center line for our sink. Let's go ahead and pull that up. I'm just going to click on that, pull that up, and I'm going to use my crosshairs to somewhat align that to make sure that it is aligned. If you want to pull it up into the device or the object, you can do that as well. Now on this center line, it didn't pick up the extra faucet, the spray. Go ahead and pull this diamond up into the spray faucet, and you zoom in. There's no center line on this extension. There is an extension number. If you can see, if I zoom in a little bit further, there's the number 3. If you double click and open up that extension under the extensions and markers, you can go to number 3, mark it as a center line, and now it will become a center line dimension. Zoom out, and I want to actually position that so that I may have to press the tab key here to get to it. Position that. So I'm going to set that to be 9 inches and reposition it. Let's clean up this center line dimension a little bit. Pull this out so we can see it. I'm going to select the innermost cabinet box dimension, pull that in there. Pull this one in here, and then we'll pull the end-to-end dimension up and kind of get that away from the center line. I'm just going to slide this over. For the time being, that looks like a reasonable string of dimensions. Let's go over to this side. There's a lot going on this one. Select it. We've already dimensioned the sink cabinet on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and pull these dimensions off. The sink cabinet, just click on here, pull these diamonds off. Pull it off, certainly off the casing, off the side here, and let's take a look at what we have. So we have our molding, we have our countertop, and then we have our toe kick. And let's do a little bit of cleanup on here. Slide it in, and again, if you zoom in, you can get the 4-plex move handle. If you want to move these above the dimension line, maybe pick one and go with it so your style is always the same. And I'm just going to pull this one out as well. You can use your crosshairs here to line it up, make sure that it's well lined. Pull this in a little bit, and then I'm going to highlight the extension lines, pull those over. I'm going to pull my dimension over to the side and then grab that extension and pull it in. Fill the screen with F6, and you can see that our dimensions are somewhat well placed. Let's go ahead and open up the library. I'm going to grab a CAD glass symbol. You can find this in the floor plan. I saved a copy of it. You can put it in your library. That way you can easily get to it. Once we've got that, I'm going to go ahead and send this out to the layout sheet. I know that I still have to do my backsplash and my electrical, and I will get to that. Again, I want to make sure that it's a 1/2-inch scale. I like to use plot lines. That will give it black and white. It will also make sure your line weights, if you've set any line weight work, and if you want to also send it in color, send it in color. I think that's better than using live view, which is more image based. Once we sent that to page 4, which is on our template file, we can then go in and move it on the layout sheet and position it. Again, there's already text. If your camera, I named it A. If you make a change to that, you can easily modify that. A few additional things on this wall elevation. The project calls for having a backsplash underneath the base cabinets. On your base cabinets, you can set the backsplash to base below. The issue with that is I don't have a cabinet that would fill this gap. There's a tool that you can use for custom backsplashes. Underneath the cabinet tool, if you select custom backsplash, simply click on the wall. That will place the backsplash, and then you can resize that to, and I'm just going to pull it down to the light rail area, and that's how I add my custom backsplash. The tile pattern on my backsplash is very light. I'm going to use the Adjust Materials Definition tool up here in the upper menu. Click on it, and I want to set the tile pattern of that to be much darker. On the lines, I'm going to come in and I'm going to darken that up. You'll be able to see a preview of it. If you want to change it to be a larger pattern in here, you can come in and change it right in this area in here. I have the style set as brick. There are other options that you can choose from. Once I do that, you'll be able to see that pattern update. The next item, if you are picky about the way your section view looks, notice my base cabinet is cut through the box. And depending on where you cut this, you may see the stove, you may see other components. It looks nice on the wall cabinet because my section cut is outside of the box. If you want to cover this up and mask it, what I use is the CAD crossbox. You can come in, snap onto the corner, bring that up, and create a crossbox. I also will typically, if this is in color, open it up and match the color. Simply click the color button here, the object eyedropper, pick up the color to match your box if you're doing this in color, and then you will be able to mask that and create a nice crisp view. One final step in the kitchen design, I want to make sure the label for the sink base is visible and on. Notice that I have created a sink base with the apron sink and there's no label on it. I'm going to highlight the sink, pull out the label, which is simply a one drawer sink. I'm going to pull that out, again holding my control key down, double click on the cabinet, and underneath the label I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to specify that this is a sink base SB39. Again, if you wanted to use the insert of width, if you ever changed this, you could use that macro. It would automatically adjust as you resize that cabinet. So that will wrap up this segment of the video series. We went through and created our main wall for the sink, our oven, dishwasher. We placed all of the base, full height, and wall cabinets. We did our wall elevation and sent it out to the layout view and added our dimensions. In the next few video segments, we'll take a look at the secondary wall and also creating the island and then dimensioning the floor plan.